Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Julia Weiden, a meteorologist here at AccuWeather, and we want to help you get prepared for the upcoming winter season. This is the start of our AccuWeather Ready Preparedness interviews that we're doing today. We have Brian Wimer with us. Brian, you're a senior meteorologist here at AccuWeather.
That's right.
And we are going to be talking about what's going on with the winter outlook that's coming up. And we're also going to be talking a bit about this storm that's coming up as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And I think a lot of people at home are excited for the winter season that's coming up. If you're a ski fan, if you like the outdoor winter sports, but travelers not necessarily so excited for this storm that's coming up tonight and tomorrow. And hey, I just want to remind everyone at home that you can type in your questions to the comments section and we'll hopefully get to answer them for you. So let's talk a little bit about this system that's going on right now. What's in the forecast with regards to all the wintry precipitation?
Right now there's rain in the southeastern states. It's still too warm for snow down there this early in the season, but as it spreads, precipitation spreads northward, there's actually a little bit of snow going on in the mid-Mississippi Valley. That's going to intensify tonight around St. Louis and continue into tomorrow morning in southern Illinois. There'll be a couple inches of snow there. Around St. Louis itself, as much as 4 to 8 inches of snow. So that'll make difficult travel. And then late tonight, ice spreads up through the southern Appalachians and moves northward tomorrow through the northeast and eastern Great Lakes in the form of snow, sleet, freezing rain. And areas near the coast will change over to rain, but areas away from the coast, it'll be difficult travel tomorrow and tomorrow night as well.
Okay, so do you think tomorrow and tomorrow night, could that possibly be during that afternoon commute time frame?
The afternoon commute will be very difficult, especially from eastern Pennsylvania northward through eastern New York State and into southern New England. The big cities from Washington to New York City will probably change over to rain by the end of the day, right in the cities and southeastward, but the northern and western suburbs will continue to have some ice and snow for the evening commute.
And this is an interesting storm because it's coming in from the southeast U.S. and it's going on into the northeast where we have a lot of cold air in place already. So if we can just pull up the radar here, I do want to show you that you can see the heavy rain on the map already, but there's that thin band where you're getting that mixing to occur, and that is going to spread its way farther off to the east as this system rises its way northbound. So we are looking at that possibility for ice in cities like D.C. and Baltimore in the morning hours.
That's correct, and especially areas west of there. And it'll be starting as far south tonight, some ice in the mountains of North Carolina and southwestern Virginia.
So basically next 24 hours, we want people to be on the alert and to take it carefully if they're going to be traveling.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right. Well, we do want to get to some of the questions about this upcoming winter season as a whole. But if you do have any more questions about what's going on with this particular system, you can also ask them and we'll get to them. But we want to talk about, again, the seasonal outlook. Is there anyone that's going to be seeing a colder than average outlook for the winter months?
Yes, it looks like the southeastern states from the southern Appalachians southward to the deep south and eastern Texas are going to average colder than normal. And also a small area in the Four Corners. But for the most part, the west and the northern plains are going to be warmer than normal. Temperatures near average for the central plains to much of the northeast, although that doesn't mean there won't be cold weather. Especially the end of the winter in the northeast looks pretty cold.
And we tell everyone at home to take these forecasts with a grain of salt. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't ever see cold temperatures in the warmer regions. It's just a 3-month average. That's what our outlook is.
The average over the entire 3 months is what we think, warm in the west, cool in the southeast, but that doesn't mean there won't be the opposite for a short times in the middle during those 3 months.
And what's driving that? Why do we think it's going to be colder than average in the southeast, for example?
Part of it is that we're expecting a weak to moderate El Nino this winter, and that often leads to a stormy pattern across the Gulf Coast. So it looks like it's going to be a lot of clouds, a lot of storm systems. So the cloud cover and precipitation will limit the temperatures.
So speaking of precipitation, everyone wants to know about snow and how much we're going to be seeing this season. Any idea on the outlook for these next few months on who's going to see more than normal?
Well, it also looks like, along with the storminess in the southeast, it may be cold enough for more snow than usual in some of the deep south and through the Tennessee Valley and up the southern Appalachians. So those places, while they typically don't get a lot of snow and they won't have as much snow as northern areas, they will, we think, have above normal snowfall this winter. And a few of those storms in the south where you're concerned will turn the corner and come up the east coast and could lead to above normal snowfall in the mid-Atlantic, potentially even eastern New England. So cities like Washington, D.C. may have somewhere in the neighborhood of double their normal snowfall. Normal's
Wow.
15 inches. We're thinking there might be near 30 inches. Cities like New York City and Boston may be just slightly above normal, not as much above, but still getting their share of snow events this winter.
And you did address this a bit already, but we do have a question coming in from a viewer wanting to know about how El Nino is going to affect the East Coast. This viewer is saying it seems like everyone has a different prediction, and that's pretty common with El Nino in the Northeast because you're kind of almost on a boundary where you could go either way.
Yeah, and this doesn't look like a real strong El Nino like some winters, which tip things a little different direction. But so in the East, we feel the temperatures will be near normal on average, but again, it may be colder than normal in February, and also above normal precipitation, especially from the mid-Atlantic southward.
And I want to bring this up because Larry is asking an interesting question. He's saying, doesn't Lake Ontario help protect us every now and then when it comes to nor'easters? How does, I guess, large bodies of water, how would that influence the snowfall, for example, from a nor'easter?
Well, the lake itself doesn't really offer protections. It's more critical how exactly the storm tracks, how close. If it goes far enough offshore, then the precipitation will be limited to the coastal areas. If it tracks a little farther west, then areas closer to the Lake Ontario could still get heavy snow.
And of course, you can always see the snow on the backside of the system from the lake effect, and you get that
Right.
northwesterly flow to
Exactly.
come in. I love lake effect snow. I think it's really fun to forecast, but my goodness, it's a challenge.
Yes.
Speaking of snow, is there any area that's going to see less than normal snow this year?
Yes, we feel the area from the western Great Lakes southward through the Central Plains will have a dry winter. That includes rain and snow. So we think cities like Chicago and Minneapolis and surrounding areas will have below normal snowfall, and that extends into the central Great Lakes as well.
Is there any hope for folks in southwestern U.S., maybe not necessarily in terms of snow, but just getting some moisture? That area has been so starved for it recently.
Right. El Nino sometimes brings more precipitation than average in California, and we think that will be the case again this winter,
Okay.
Especially in central and northern California. Not so sure if the storm track impacts the southern part of the state and the deep southwest.
Okay, that's good to know. And I think we already covered where the snowfall amounts will be above normal. We mentioned the mid-Atlantic seeing in D.C. possibly double the amounts of snow than you would normally get for this time of
Right.
year. And that, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, from that area southward, the normals aren't that great. So you get a couple storms, or even in the deep south, one storm that can get you your normal snowfall of the winter, and you get a second storm and you're going to be above
Double it,
normal.
of course. And of course, we are talking about this storm that's coming up through the eastern half of the U.S. that is going to be bringing some ice to the D.C. area as well. So that also factors in.
Yeah, and that's a concern as well as we go through the winter down through the Tennessee Valley, that there may be enough cold air for ice but not snow, so that ice is a concern in that region as well as we go through the winter.
Now, some areas of the country don't really ever get to see snow even in the winter. Instead, they get rainy seasons. In the southeastern U.S., we've had a lot of problems recently. We had, of course, a couple of different hurricanes that impacted the southeastern U.S. Is there any more rain to come?
Yeah, the entire southeast looks like they're above normal precipitation. That would include Florida. It looks like a potentially wet winter. There's also concern the second half of the winter for an early start to some thunderstorms and potential severe thunderstorms in the Florida area as well. So it doesn't look like a real nice winter throughout the entire southeast, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, like to escape maybe out to the southeast of Florida to try to enjoy those cold winter months, but unfortunately, it looks like you'll be dealing with a good amount of wet weather.
Right, it'll definitely be warmer than farther north, but it may be wet as well.
Yeah, a little bit of a price tag there to pay. Want to talk about what's going on out in California, because that is a really big story right now with the dry air and the blustery winds. Is there any sign of that pattern letting up in the long term?
Yeah, it may not be so much in the short term, but in the longer term, as we alluded to briefly, is that we do think it'll be above normal precipitation for central and northern California. So that's good and bad. That'll certainly help ease the fire situation. But places that have been burned, the rain often comes, not just a little bit of rain, it's significant storms. So there could be some flooding with the burned areas.
That's right. And can you explain to folks at home a little bit about how that works, how you might get more flooding in those burn scar areas?
When there's no vegetation or growth with roots that help hold the soil in place, when you get heavy rain, then it washes it away faster and it doesn't soak into the ground as much. So that causes the flooding concerns in the burn areas.
And of course, you have all that debris in that area as well that could get washed away. So it does create a pretty hazardous situation for people in those regions.
Get clogged under bridges and things on the rivers.
Just for anyone who's just joining us right now, thank you again for tuning on in. We are talking to Brian Wimer, who's a senior meteorologist here at AccuWeather, and we're talking about the winter outlook, but we're also going to be touching a little bit more on this upcoming storm. So again, if you have questions that you want to ask about the forecast, type them in and we'll do our best to get them answered. And I want to ask a question that, even though it's only November, it's not even Thanksgiving yet, people are thinking ahead to this Christmas time. Is there any chance for a white Christmas in certain parts of the country?
I think it's probably going to be more of a normal December season. So the best chance of a white Christmas, I would say, would be northern New York and northern New England.
Very standard.
Which is kind of normal. Probably the northern Rockies as well.
Yeah.
But the northern New England, I think, would have the highest chance of a white Christmas.
What about in the big cities along the I-95 corridor in the East Coast?
It's a little far out to be too specific. It's probably, I would say, climatologically normal, so not a great chance in those areas.
Mm-hmm. I grew up on Long Island, and I know that every year I kept my fingers crossed for a white Christmas. It very rarely happened. Once I moved to Syracuse, New York, though, then white Christmas happened pretty easily.
Right.
So that was always fun. But a lot of people in that area, I know, love the white Christmas. And then once you get to about January 1st, you get you're ready for spring to happen, of course.
Unless you're a skier.
Yeah, exactly. If you're up in those mountains, it's a little bit more fun. Okay, so I think we showed you that white snowfall map for Christmas. So fun times there for the next couple of months ahead. And I do want to circle back, though, a little bit to this storm that we have that's coming up in these overnight hours, because something that we've been talking to you about is the potential for ice during the overnight and possibly into the morning commute for some big cities like Washington, D.C., over towards Baltimore. And I want to see if you have any tips for people who are maybe going to be out driving during that time, if you have to hit the road for your morning commute in, any tips for driving in icy weather?
Well, number one, allow yourself a little extra time so you don't have to rush, because you have to go slower if it's icy or even snow-covered roads. Just take it easy. Don't hit the brakes real hard. When you may be driving along straight and not having an issue, but be careful when you go to make a turn. That's when you often start sliding. So that would be the main things. Absolutely,
yeah. So people just, again, definitely need to give themselves extra time, and we do have some driving tips up on the screen there. We have a question coming in from a viewer who is going to be driving from northern Illinois over towards Kentucky on Friday. Now, by that point, this storm should be done.
Yeah, the storm will be long gone by Friday, and the temperatures during the day Friday in that region will be above freezing. So I think especially the main road should be in okay shape by then.
And Carolyn is also asking about in Jasper, Indiana, regarding this current storm, if it's going to be, I guess, bad driving weather in that area. Indiana, we're kind of looking at a very fringe region.
You know, they'll get some snow and maybe a little bit of ice, which certainly can make the roads tricky. I would be most concerned about the Thursday morning commute and Thursday morning time frame, or late tonight and Thursday morning.
And let's see if we can pull up that snowfall total map forecast. That is going to, again, I think give our viewers the best idea of where the snow is going to be falling and where you're going to have the worst of those conditions. Again, we mentioned St. Louis, Missouri, possibly getting 4 to 8 inches of snow. So that's certainly a spot to watch. And then from there in the Northeast, it becomes a little bit tricky because we're looking at a sleet and freezing rain combo at the onset of precipitation. Then for the I-95 corridor, that's going to change over to rain. But for areas farther off to the north and west of the I-95, you're looking at it possibly becoming snow.
Right. And even in the areas here in Ohio and Indiana that aren't shaded, there can still be a ½ inch or inch of snow and some ice to make the roads difficult travel in that area for first thing Friday or Thursday morning.
When we talk about the ice forecast, how much ice does it take in order to start to see some problems?
Very little if the roads are cold. Even a thin coating of ice can make things very slick. So it doesn't take very much ice, and a lot of times the roads may look, especially at night, they may look just like they're wet and shiny, but they could actually be icy.
Yep, and that will really get you. So again, overnight hours are going to be a really difficult time, so want to make sure that everyone is staying safe. And of course, you can always get more on the forecast by heading over to AccuWeather.com. You can use the AccuWeather app, and it has this really cool function called MinuteCast, which gives you down to the minute the next time precipitation is coming to your area. So if that is something that you need to know, give that app a download. It is free, it's a really great tool to use. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk to you about the winter forecast and about the storm.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, be sure to tune in with us next week. We are going to be talking about how to get your car winter weather ready. And that information is going to be coming up at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. So be sure to join us. It's just in time for those holiday travels. Again, thanks for joining us.